In this video, we explore a hidden dynamic that most people never see: how the nervous system can interpret intimacy as risk, and why this often leads people to pull away from the very connection they desire. This perspective is part of what I call the somatic path, understanding how the state of the body shapes the relationships we experience.
Many people say they want a loving, stable relationship, someone who is kind, emotionally present, and genuinely cares for them. But when that kind of relationship finally appears, something unexpected can happen. The closeness begins to feel uncomfortable. Small doubts appear. Distance quietly grows. A person may find themselves pulling away, becoming more critical, or suddenly feeling unsure about something that once felt promising. It can be confusing because nothing is actually wrong. Yet the moment love begins to feel real, something in the body becomes uneasy. What most people don't realize is that intimacy does not only involve emotions or thoughts, it also involves the nervous system. When a relationship becomes deeper, the body begins to interpret that closeness in a very specific way. Intimacy means we are allowing another person to matter to us. And the moment someone truly matters, the possibility of loss also appears. For a nervous system that has experienced emotional pain in the past, this can feel dangerous. The body does not carefully analyze whether the current relationship is healthy or unhealthy. Instead, it responds to familiarity and memory. If earlier experiences of closeness involved rejection, abandonment, or emotional unpredictability, the nervous system quietly learned that intimacy carries risk. So, when a relationship begins to feel meaningful, the body may react as if it needs to protect itself. This protection often happens long before the mind understands what is happening. A person might begin to notice subtle changes in how they feel. Someone who once felt deeply attracted may suddenly feel uncertain. Small habits or differences that once seemed unimportant may begin to feel irritating. Doubts about the relationship may start appearing in the mind. From the outside, it can look like someone is losing interest or becoming inconsistent. But internally, something different is happening. The nervous system is responding to vulnerability. Intimacy opens a space where we can be seen more clearly by another person. It allows affection, care, and emotional closeness to deepen. Yet that same openness can also activate older fears that were never fully resolved. The body begins asking quiet questions beneath the surface of awareness. What if this person leaves? What if I get hurt again? What if I depend on someone who cannot stay? These questions are rarely spoken out loud, and often the person experiencing them may not consciously recognize them. Instead, the body tries to reduce the sense of exposure. Sometimes this shows up as emotional distance, sometimes as criticism or doubt, sometimes as a sudden feeling that something about the relationship is not quite right. It is not that the person truly wants to sabotage love. It is that the nervous system is trying to protect the heart from pain it once learned to expect. This dynamic often appears in ways that are surprisingly subtle. A relationship may begin with warmth and excitement. Two people feel drawn to each other. Conversation flows easily. There is curiosity, laughter, and a sense that something meaningful might be developing. In the early stages, the nervous system is often comfortable with this connection because the relationship is still light. The possibility of loss has not yet fully entered the body's awareness. The connection feels enjoyable, but it does not yet feel essential. As the relationship deepens, however, something begins to change. Perhaps the two people begin seeing each other more often. Emotional conversations become more honest. Trust grows. The bond becomes more real. And this is often the moment when the nervous system begins to respond. Someone who once felt excited about the relationship may begin to feel a quiet sense of unease. It might be difficult to explain. Nothing obvious is wrong. The other person is still kind, attentive, and present. Yet internally, something begins to tighten. A person might suddenly notice themselves becoming more critical. Small things that once seemed insignificant may begin to stand out. The way the other person speaks, their habits, or minor differences may begin to feel irritating. Sometimes this shift shows up as emotional distance. Messages are answered more slowly. Conversations feel slightly less open. Time together begins to feel heavier than it once did. The person experiencing this may interpret it as a change in attraction. They may think, maybe I'm not as interested as I thought. But often what is actually happening is that the nervous system has begun to register the relationship as meaningful. The deeper the bond becomes, the more the body recognizes that this person matters. And when someone matters, vulnerability appears. For many people, earlier experiences of closeness included moments of disappointment, rejection, or emotional instability. These experiences may not even have been dramatic. They may have been small but repeated moments where connection felt uncertain or unpredictable. Over time, the nervous system learns to associate intimacy with risk. So when a healthy relationship begins to deepen, the body may quietly prepare itself for what it once experienced. Sometimes this preparation takes the form of emotional withdrawal. A person may feel the urge to create a little distance, even if they cannot explain why. Sometimes it appears as doubt. The mind begins asking questions such as, is this really the right relationship? What if there's someone better? Maybe something is missing. These thoughts can feel convincing because they arise alongside real sensations in the body. The person may genuinely feel less relaxed, less open, or less excited than they did before. In other cases, the nervous system responds through conflict. Arguments may begin over relatively small things. Conversations that once felt easy may become tense. The relationship can start to feel more complicated than it did in the beginning. From the outside, it may appear that the couple simply discovered they were incompatible. But often the deeper reality is that intimacy increased faster than the nervous system's capacity to feel safe with that intimacy. In some situations, a person may even end the relationship without fully understanding why. They might say something like, it just didn't feel right, or something was missing. Yet, if they later reflect on the relationship, they may realize that the other person was actually caring, stable, and emotionally available. What felt uncomfortable was not the relationship itself. What felt uncomfortable was the level of closeness it invited. The body had moved into unfamiliar territory. For someone whose nervous system learned to expect unpredictability or emotional pain, stable love can initially feel strange. Calm itself may begin to feel unfamiliar to the body. Consistency may feel almost suspicious, and the absence of drama may even be interpreted as a lack of chemistry. So the nervous system begins searching for ways to return to what it understands. Sometimes that means creating distance. Sometimes it means creating conflict. And sometimes it means quietly walking away from something that was actually good. From the outside, this can look like self-sabotage. But from the perspective of the nervous system, it is simply a strategy of protection. From a somatic perspective, this pattern begins to make much more sense. What appears to be self-sabotage is often the nervous system trying to protect the heart from pain it once learned to expect. The body is not trying to ruin love. It is trying to avoid the possibility of being hurt again. When intimacy increases, the nervous system scans for familiar signals. If earlier experiences of closeness involve disappointment, abandonment, or emotional instability, the body may quietly assume that the same pattern will eventually repeat, so it attempts to reduce vulnerability before that imagined pain arrives. Understanding this changes how we interpret what is happening. Instead of seeing these reactions as personal failure or emotional immaturity, we can begin to recognize them as protective responses within the body. Protection is not the enemy of love. It is simply a strategy the nervous system developed to survive earlier experiences. What changes things is the gradual return of safety. As the nervous system begins to experience closeness without harm, it slowly learns that intimacy does not have to lead to loss. The body starts to recognize that connection can exist without danger. Over time, the reactions that once created distance begin to soften. The urge to withdraw becomes less intense. The need to search for flaws becomes quieter. Closeness begins to feel less overwhelming. Love no longer feels like something that must be carefully managed or protected against. Instead, it begins to feel steady, calm, even ordinary. And while that calm may seem unfamiliar at first, it is often a sign that the nervous system is learning something new. It is learning that connection does not always need to be defended against. Sometimes it can simply be received. You might take a moment to bring your attention gently back into your body. Rather than thinking about relationships in an abstract way, simply notice what happens when you imagine being deeply loved by someone who is kind, steady, and emotionally present. Not a dramatic relationship, not a chaotic one, just a quiet, stable form of love. For some people, imagining this brings a sense of warmth or ease. The body may soften slightly, breathing may slow, but for many people, something else also appears. There may be a small tightening in the chest, a subtle restlessness, a feeling of uncertainty or hesitation. Sometimes the mind begins to ask questions almost immediately. Would it last? Would it change? Would it eventually disappear? These reactions are very natural. The body is simply responding based on what it has learned about closeness over time. If earlier experiences of connection were unpredictable, the nervous system may not yet recognize calm love as familiar territory. It may feel unusual, almost like entering a place the body has not visited before. This is why understanding the nervous system can be so helpful in relationships. When we begin to see these reactions clearly, they no longer have to control our behavior in the same unconscious way. Instead of assuming something is wrong with the relationship, we can simply notice what the body is doing. We can observe the moment when closeness creates tension, the moment when affection feels slightly uncomfortable, the moment when the urge to pull away quietly appears. Nothing needs to be forced or corrected. Awareness itself begins to change the experience. As the nervous system gradually learns that connection can exist without harm, intimacy begins to feel less threatening. Closeness no longer feels like something the body must defend against. Instead, it slowly becomes something the body can allow. And over time, love may begin to feel less like a risk to survive and more like a place where the nervous system can finally rest. This perspective is part of what I call the somatic path, understanding how the state of the body quietly shapes the relationships we experience. As the nervous system begins to feel safer with closeness, love no longer needs to be defended against. If this conversation resonates with you, you can subscribe for future videos or continue with the next one where we explore why attraction often happens before thinking.
Hi, it's Jim Daunt. My new book, The Somatic Path, is now available on Amazon. Go check it out. Also, if you're interested in some free ebooks, either check the links in the description or my website, jimdaunt.com.